Hello everyone! I managed to reach Legend with a timeout strat, which you may or may not already know that I like to play. The games are played in Great League Remix Cup and the team consists of Bubblebeam Mantine in the lead with mandibuzz and Excel Best Buddy chansey in the back. This team is not really that balanced considering you just lose to a rock or electric type lead, but at least this is in Remix Cup, so many common threats such as Lantern, Ambestiodon and Registeel are not allowed. However, I noticed that there are tons of Lickitungs, Glygars, Mantines, Mandibuzzes and Crozelias in Remix Cup, which make this a viable strat. So now let's just jump straight into the battles, and my first opponent is Rubik's Masterx, and he leads with a Poliwrath, which obviously is amazing for Mantine, so he switches into Gligar and I go straight for the Bubble Beam, and this is because we are desynced after the switch, so essentially whoever throws the first charge move is gonna deny the opponent an extra fast move. And then I go into Mandibuzz, because Mandibuzz is slightly tankier than Mantine, and this Gligar is debuffed, so Mandibuzz can just tank every single aerial ace, and I can charge up a ton of energy. So here comes the third aerial ace, and I'm gonna go for a Dark Pulse, and I hope that this will put the Gligar into farm down range, but it's actually not going to do that. So I'm basically forced to throw an aerial ace here, or shield, if I want to maintain switch advantage, and of course I want that with Mantine and Chansey against the Poliwrath. So unfortunately I'm going to have to let my Mandibuzz go down, and I'm not even going to reach one more aerial ace. But at least I have both health advantage, which is great considering I aimed for the game to end in a timeout. But also I have switch advantage. So now I'm going to stay in with my Mantine against the Mandibuzz, because there's no way for Chansey to KO this Mandibuzz. But Mantine can debuff it, and then I have two shields, so the charge moves that are not debuffed or just one step debuffed, I can shield them, and now it's 2 times debuffed, so now the Dark Pulse is not even going to take me down to the red, which it otherwise probably would have. So now my goal is to KO one of my opponent's Pokemon, and then Chansey will survive for the rest of the game. And you probably already know, but a game of Pokemon Go PvP is 4 minutes and 30 seconds. So here my opponent goes back into the battle with the Poliwrath to reset the debuffs, but I'm just gonna keep on debuffing it, and then I go into Chansey. And notice that I have Zen Headbutt, and that is for 2 reasons. It's slightly better against Poliwrath, and it's slightly better against Skarmory, and both of them are very common in Remix Cup. So now with timeout, my Chansey has more HP than their 2 combined, and I win the game. Moving on to the second game, and this time it's against Discount Kaladin, and he leads with a Shadow Dragonair, so this is pretty bad for the timeout strat, but at least it's very playable for the Mantine. So I do 7 wing attacks, bait the Ice Beam, and go for a Bubble Beam instead. And my opponent shields, so now I can confidently just 2 shield in this matchup and defeat the Dragonair. So that will be the first goal accomplished of the timeout strat, to KO one of my opponent's Pokemon, and then I will try to survive with all 3 of the rest. So here I'm forced to shield, because I don't think that I will survive both the Dragon Breath afterwards and the Body Slam. So then my opponent sends in a normal type. I didn't see what it was, so I just blindly threw a Bubble Beam. It's a Dubwool, and Dubwool reaches Body Slam very quickly, and I did not want to go into a CMP tie there, so I tried to switch into Mandibuzz, and my opponent counter switches into Skarmory. So I banked my move on Mantine there. My opponent is not going to throw any charge move yet. He's going to charge up to basically 100 energy before throwing the Brave Bird, but Mandibuzz is way too tanky. It's just going to eat this Brave Bird and be able to reach one more charge attack. And my opponent is so debuffed, so he needs to shield this if he wants to survive with the Skarmory and all of its energy. But that energy is going to be useless, because I have a Chansey that can eat any and all attacks from anything. And then my opponent goes into a Dubwool. And here, usually, I would have sped up this part basically times 4 instead of just twice the speed. But I'm using a new video editing tool, so I can't do it. It's much more limited. So we will just have to take 4 Body Slams and then go for Hyper Beam, the second strongest move in the game after Aeroblast. and even though Chansey has no attack stat, it still deals a lot of damage. And then once again I have Zen Headbutt here. It's basically slightly worse than Pound on paper, but it has a better matchup against Skarmory. Moving on to the next game against J Mills, and he leads with a Gligar, so once again a pretty nice lead for Mantine. Not the best in the world, but I can at least bait the Ice Beam, but my opponent goes for a catch, and it's a catch on Jellicent, so now my Mandibuzz is just going to eat it alive. I go straight for the Dark Pulse in case they have some Bubble Beam shenanigans, and then I intend to just farm down all the way with the Mandibuzz. My opponent goes for a Surf and then another, and this is nothing for Mandibuzz. I will be able to go up to 100 energy and tank another Surf, and then my opponent is actually not going to let me farm down all the way. They're sending Gligar again, and I'm totally fine with this. I'm going for one Dark Pulse and saw that 2 Dark Pulses are not going to be enough, so I will need 2 Aerial Aces as well. And since my opponent overfarmed so much in the beginning, they are at another Aerial Ace there, so I did not want to let my Mandibuzz take that and be forced to shield. So instead I went into my Mantine, and now their last Pokemon is a Mantine on their own. And at this point I have already won the game, they just don't know it yet, because there's no way ever that a Mantine that is debuffed into Oblivion and a Jellicent together can take down the Chansey. So I'm just going to survive, continue debuffing this, and when I get too low, I will switch into Chansey. My opponent clears their debuffs, but I don't care. Chansey doesn't care. Chansey will just eat everything. And at this point my opponent could resign, but they are going to stay in and spam out Aerial Ace after Aerial Ace after Aerial Ace. So maybe this is a good time to... well, I want to recommend HomesliceHenry's video, where he featured me when I reached rank 15 on the global leaderboard. I'll put some link somewhere. So, well, check it out. I did it with Shadow Magnezone, and that's my personal best. And here I just quit attacking. I'm done with this game. My opponent is just wasting our time. Moving on to game number 4 against Nava Empire, and he leads with a Mantine, and this is a mirror match, but they are likely to have Ice Beam and I have Bubble Beam, so I'm at a slight disadvantage, but I'm going for the Bubble Beam early, and my opponent of course doesn't shield this early, but I'm actually going to shield their first charge move to just send a message that I'm not willing to let this lead matchup go. And then I go straight for the Aerial Ace to put some damage onto their Mantine, and they switch out to clear the debuff and go into Dragonair. So this is nice, because I'm just like in earlier games, I'm able to outpace the Dragonair. And now if they want to reach another charge move or try to farm me down with fast moves, they will have to shield this. So I'm going to debuff them, and then they are in perfect farm down range for my Mandibuzz. So I'm just going to tank a debuffed Body Slam easily, and then come out of this matchup with a lot of energy. But my opponent denies me the full farm down by switching into their Mantine, but now I have a ton of energy, and Mandibuzz is too tanky, it's not going to go down by an Ice Beam. So I'm going to be able to reach one more charge move, and their last Pokemon is a Lickitung. So I'm throwing one more Aerial Ace, and since I have 3 surviving Pokemon and my opponent only has 2, and their Dragonair is basically useless, I'm sending in my Chansey, and they are not going to be able to KO Chansey with a Lickitung ever in the remaining time frame. So my opponent throws a Body Slam and then throws another charge move, but they are going to realize this is completely pointless, and they resign the game. Moving on to the last game of the set against House Stark, and he leads with a Skarmory, which is pretty bad for Mantine, so I'm definitely switching into Mandibuzz as soon as I can and going straight for the Dark Pulse just to put a dent into the Skarmory in case I have to deal with it with Mantine later in the game. And my opponent charges up a bit extra energy before going for a charge move, and I'm definitely shielding here either way, but I correctly shield up the Brave Bird. I could not afford to go down into farm down range with my Mandibuzz this early in the game. I would just straight up have lost it. And my opponent's second Pokemon is a Guzzlord, so it's pretty decent for Mandibuzz actually, even though the Guzzlord has slight advantage. But with the extra energy from the Skarmory, I'm able to put it down into the red before he even throws a charge move, and then I'm able to reach one more charge move. And my opponent recognized that I would have reached that charge move, so they go for the CMP, but I shield. I'm forcing them to shield, and then I go back into Mantine. So now, since they shielded, I thought that they had realized that I'm going for the timeout, but they actually did not. They let me farm down the Guzzlord, which is it's a mistake, since now all I have to do is survive with my 3 Pokemon while they have only 2, and I'm winning. So thanks to that Bubble Beam, I was able to tank a Brave Bird, and then their last Pokemon is a Jellicent, and now the switch timer is just not up. I needed 3 more seconds. So I have no option, and they farm down my Mantine. So that was pretty bad actually, but at least I was able to debuff this Jellicent, so it's not able to in any meaningful way damage my chansey. So I'm going to charge up a ton of energy on this Jellicent, and they are actually going to switch into Skarmory, which basically gives me a win con. All I need to do now is KO the Skarmory and I win. So I went for the Hyper Beam, but my opponent shielded it, and I'm still pretty much in a winning position, except I'm battling the clock. If my opponent is able to survive, his Jellicent has more HP than my Pokemon, and I'm not able to reach a Hyper Beam, but this Psychic just put it in perfect range for a farm down, and now this Jellicent is nowhere near able to KO my chansey. I have 2 Pokemon remaining, they have only 1, so I win the game. And that's basically all thanks to my Zen Headbutt instead of Pound.
Taking all the fire, let's go!
So basically that's how I reach Legend this season, and that's it. Thanks for watching!